Okay, so for everybody who is here on time, welcome. Excuse me, I'm just responding to a text from Mark. Anyway, happy Halloween, everybody. We're meeting on Halloween, which is, I think, very auspicious for us for many reasons, which I'll talk about when I share some teachings with you. And I appreciate Laura's Halloween emojis. And, all these symbols of Halloween have really interesting historical origins, if you ever care to look them up. The jack-o'-lantern, the black cats. In the Middle Ages, for example, black cats were understood to be the familiars of witches. And so when the Puritans came to this country, there was a big fear of women, of witches. And so black cats, became, right, a symbol of something to fear. Anyway, there's lots of history like that for all the Halloween symbols that we have today. And I want to talk a little bit about the meaning of Halloween, as especially the night before what is now called All Saints' Day or Day of the Dead in Christian traditions. And this, of course, too, has origins in non-Christian, Celtic, and other pagan celebrations. So this will be fun to look at in light of some of the Buddhist teachings. So welcome, everybody. My name is Trudy. I'm the founder of at InsightLA, still very much in it. And for those of you who may be new, I doubt any new person will be here now, actually, because they will think it's starting in an hour. So I'm sorry about that, but Mark doesn't know how that happened, but he's definitely going to find out. And in the meantime, let's sit together. You know how the day goes, the morning goes, and let's sit together now. And I know that last week, Allison did a beautiful guided meditation on the elements. I listened to her teaching, which was great. And I'd like to spend a lot of the time in silence today and just do a very simple meditation that will help us just ground ourselves in the present moment and be fully here together. So taking a deep breath in and out. I like to breathe in this aliveness and energy of the moment. And with the out breath, releasing any tension that's held in the shoulders and the body. The in-breath being this breath of inspiration and an energizing breath. And the out-breath, that breath of releasing, hopefully relaxing. And if you follow the out-breath all the way to the end, you can feel how it just dissolves into space. Just kind of disappears, and then the new in-breath is born. And as the body and the mind quiet, little by little, breath by breath, you can feel that slight pause in between the breaths. Where one breath ends, disappears, and the next breath appears, fills the body, fills the lungs. And just experiencing, studying the movement of the breath in the body, really sensing and feeling the sensations of in the body that are associated with breathing. It just helps the mind be present. And if the breath isn't in any way a calming subject for meditation, for gathering your attention, you can study the same movement of impermanence with sound. The sounds of life around you. As they appear and vanish. Or with the sensations in the body. The sensations of ease, of discomfort, and specifically detailed noticing of the shifting and moving sensations of tingling, of warmth. Whatever is being experienced right here, right now. And if the attention is really scattered for you right now, you can actually, even though it's a little bit contrived, you can actually just extend that brief pause between the breaths a tiny bit. Because in that pause, there's stillness. The same stillness that you may notice at the end of a sound. Or the stillness of the body sitting quietly as the backdrop for the dance of sensation. And as the attention begins to be able to rest a little more steadily, just beginning to notice what's happening, what the mind is doing right now. Just noticing in a spirit of kindness, not judgment, in the spirit of learning, of insight. Insight into the way things appear and disappear, thoughts, feelings, sensations, everything. Insight into impermanence. Just seeing it moment to moment. Insight into the way dwelling on things is painful. And insight into the way that it's absolutely not your fault. It's a completely impersonal process. Which we take very personally. And noticing that tendency too. Just calmly, peacefully abiding with what is, moment by moment. Breath by breath. Always here. Always now. And for the last few minutes of our sitting, just sprinkle some sweetness on whatever's happening, whatever is sweet for you, candy corn or little miniature Snicker bars or whatever it might be that you like, or that represents sweetness. Just sprinkling that over the experience of this moment. Thank you, everybody. And if you feel like turning on your cameras, I'm always happy to see you. It's not required, of course, but happy to see you. So many things I'd love to share with you about Halloween. And it's a holiday I really like. And I think it's a holiday when, most of us don't really have any idea of why we're doing what we do on Halloween, getting costumes. And I just want to link it to what Allison was teaching about last week, where the Buddha would see whatever was a hindrance or an obstacle, would see the temptation in the form of Mara and say, Mara, I see you. We can think of the costumes that cover the hindrances, for example, the wanting, the aversion, the just tired of it all, the doubt or anxiety or restlessness, or all these things that arise. They are just Mara in costume. And if we could always, all year long, when we're meditating, keep the spirit of Halloween, that these costumed, whatever we want to call them, the hindrances, the obstacles, the things that we feel undermine our practice, our ability to be confident and present in our experience of life, that they come in all different disguises, right? And if we could just see them the way we see the little pirate who comes to the door and with their eye patch, and we don't get scared. We know it's the little girl from next door. So it's not scary to us. But what if we could look at all of these manifestations the same way? They're just these little beings in costume that are coming to try and scare us. I wanted to read you a poem. It's called Ghosts and Fashion. Where is it? I just had it when we sat down. I know it's here. Here's the end of it. Let's find the beginning. Excuse me, I'm just laughing because this is a little crazy. Well, I have another poem to read to you if I can't find that one, which is completely bizarre since I was just reading it before I sat down with you, sitting in this very chair. Okay, I'll find it after, but I'm not gonna, here it is, okay. It's called Ghosts in Fashion by Elaine Equi, Equi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Although it no longer has a body to cover out of a sense of decorum, the ghost must still consider fashion. Now think of these ghosts as the Maras of our life, right? It must still consider fashion, must clothe its invisibility in something. It's invisible to us without mindfulness. Clothe its invisibility in something if it's to appear in public. Some traditional specters favor the simple shroud, a toga of ectoplasm, worn Isadora Duncan style, swirling around them, while others opt for lightweight versions of once familiar t-shirts and jeans. Perhaps being thought forms, they can change their outfits instantly. Or if they are loved ones, it is we who clothe them like dolls with our memory, with our love. I actually added that last bit. But I love this part about, they're really thought forms and we're the ones who are clothing them. And it's so easy to forget that because they feel so real. But there's just something fun about dressing up and, when else do you have a chance to feed and admire the children in your neighborhood and eat all that sugar? If you do, I kind of do. And as I was saying earlier, these customs, they date back centuries. And the holiday has changed over time. It used to be ancient tradition that was imbued with spiritual meanings. And now, of course, it's the fright fest that we know today. And love, actually. And at the same time, this holiday was also marking the time of year of moving into colder, darker days and weather. And historians have linked Halloween to the Celtic holiday that was called Samhain, a Celtic festival of summer's end that's celebrated in Ireland and Scotland and the Isle of Man. And it's Halloween just really means, hallowed means holy, and the "een" part is an abbreviation of evening. So it's actually considered to be the holy evening before the Day of the Dead or All Saints Day. And before it was a Christian holiday, it was a pagan holiday. The roots go way, way back again to that part of the harvest is all done, getting ready for winter, getting ready to be more inward, a time to connect with the dying side of life. Jack and I went to San Ramon for a friend's daughter's quinceañera yesterday. And it was in a place where there were these pretty red maples and there was a pond. And so there were these red maple leaves floating, all different shades of scarlet and orange, and floating on the pond. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful reminder of this is the time when the leaves die, drop and die, flame into color if there's been enough water, or if you're in a place where the leaves do that, the deciduous trees shed their leaves and things turn brown. It's been so weird for me living in California, where the hills turn green in the winter. It's such the opposite of how it was back east, when everything turns gray and brown in the winter. But it's not a fearful or depressing way of connecting with the dying side of life. It's just what's true. And it has, of course, the understanding that there will be spring, there will be rebirth, there will be resurrection, there will be renewal. And a few years ago, one of our InsightLA teachers, oh gosh, it was probably 10 years ago now, Diana Gould invited me to the Day of the Dead celebration at the Hollywood Cemetery. I don't know, some of you may have gone there. I had never seen it. And in Boston, where I'm from, the Day of the Dead is not, I didn't really know about it because the immigrants there tend to be from other parts of the world. And it was amazing to see that cemetery. It was completely transformed into this, well, maybe the cemetery is always a sacred space, but it had beautiful altars everywhere. And it wasn't just commemorating the dead. There was joy there too. There was There were some bands, there was Aztec music, there was roasted corn, there was a feeling of almost like a fair. Um, but it's a day when people really connect with their dead loved ones, and they create these amazing altars to commemorate them. And I think there's competition actually between who can create the most beautiful ornate altar. And I don't know now with COVID if it's still happening, but at that time it was just spread out all over the lawns with canopies and lights, and and there were altars from everybody, from Uncle Luis to Johnny Ramone, to the murdered young women from Juarez, to the soldiers who've died in Iraq and Afghanistan, just everything. And it was weird too, because I remember walking toward the cemetery. There was a sudden sound of sirens screaming. There was an accident literally right at the entrance to the cemetery where a car had just flipped over. And I don't know how it happened. I didn't see it happen. I just saw it. And it was a vivid reminder of that line between life and death being so thin, and that it can change on a dime, and that we can be having a perfectly blessed and peaceful life, and boom, something happens. And I felt it looking at those altars too. And here were people sitting and feasting with their dead loved ones. It was just something so different from anything that I had seen before. And there's a figure called La Catarina, and she's very elegant in life. And she continues to be very elegant when she dies, and she comes back, and she's, there were many, many, many Catarinas wearing beautiful hats and very ornate things. And the whole thing actually brought me back to the Diamond Sutta, a Mahayana Buddhist sutta that really, the last lines go like this: so you should view this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. That's what it was like being there, just seeing, it's a kind of, the whole sutra is a kind of ode to impermanence. The Buddha is saying this is the way to see the world. Just this is the way to look at everything. A flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Oh, I forgot the bubble in the stream. That's another one, a bubble in a stream. So it was fun to see these altars, and there was one particular person who kind of grabbed my fancy that I want to just briefly tell you about, and it was Uncle Luis. And apparently Uncle Luis liked things very neat and tidy. He was very strict from what I read in the little blurb about him. He was, he just liked things spick and span. And so along with the traditional marigolds and the sugar skulls and the offerings of various foods and flowers and lights and candles, on the altar was an empty container of Windex and a can of Ajax. And it just brought him to life. You could just imagine. He probably wasn't that much of fun of an uncle to be around when he was alive. But that part of him, died when he died. That part of all of us that is annoying or irritating to others dies when we die. And what was left was the people who cared about him and loved him just because he was Uncle Luis. And that's what's left, of course, when we die. What's left when we die? What does it mean? The emptiness of who we are actually. It means empty of concepts, empty of our ideas about being a person, about being a lifespan. This is what the Diamond Sutra talks about. There's no such thing as a lifespan. There's no such thing as a person. Well, what do they mean? We're here. I'm a person. You're a person. We have a lifespan. So what does it mean? What is that about? It's about looking at everything through this concept. I have a close person who was diagnosed with cancer recently, and it's a cancer that can be put into total remission, but already they are worried about it coming back because they have this understandable fear of cancer in their mind. But it's a concept, empty of all our ideas of being a person or being a lifespan. We can see, what are we? We are the result of countless causes and conditions that it's a great chain of being, of causes and conditions that cascade down the generations and become us and then operate in our life. This is called dependent origination, the teaching that one thing leads to another. And it's a whole big teaching unto itself, which we can look at another time. But all of these things just sort of converge for me in this, in that cemetery celebration of the Day of the Dead. And I want to share with you another poem, a piece of it. It's a long poem. And this is a poem by Waldman. She was one of the great, she is alive, she's one of the great poets, founders of the School of Poetics at Naropa University with Allen Ginsberg. And she was actually in all my writing classes in college when I would be procrastinating, and she would just be writing and writing and writing. And sure enough, right? And I'm just going to read you a piece of it, but I think it's a piece that fits for today. And the poem is called Putting Makeup on Empty Space. And Caroline, maybe you can find, there's this incredible YouTube of her declaiming this poet with great drama. And maybe if you find it, you could put it in the chat. Just Google Anne Waldman Putting Makeup on Empty Space.
I think I found it.
Okay, good. I'm putting makeup on empty space. All patinas coming to empty space. Rouge blushing on empty space. I am putting makeup on empty space. Pasting eyelashes on empty space. Painting the eyebrows of empty space. Putting creams on empty space. Painting the phenomenal world. I'm hanging ornaments on empty space. Gold clips, lacquer, combs, plastic hairpins on empty space. I'm sticking wire pins into empty space. I pour words over empty space, enthrall the empty space. You can see I got inspired by her declaiming. Spinning necklaces around empty space. I pack, stuff, jam, empty space. Fancy this, imagine this, painting the phenomenal world. Bangles on wrists, pendants hung on empty space. I'm putting my memory into empty space, undressing you, hanging the wrinkled clothes on a nail, hanging the green coat on a nail, dancing in the evening. It ended with dancing in the evening. I'm still thinking about putting makeup on empty space. I want to scare you. The hanging night, the drifting night, the moaning night, daughter of troubled sleep, I want to scare you. I cup my hands in water, splash water on empty space, water drunk by empty space. Look what thoughts will do. Look what words will do. What I like about impermanence is the clash of my big body with empty space. I'm starting to sing inside about the empty space. There's some new detail every time. I'm taping the picture I love so well on the wall. Moonless black night. It's almost moonless now. Moonless black night beyond country plaid curtains, everything illuminated out of empty space. I hang the black linen dress on my body. The hanging night, the drifting night, the moaning night, the daughter of troubled sleep. This occurs to me. I hang up a mirror to catch the stars. Everything occurs to me out in the night in my skull of empty space. So this this poem goes on, and it's really a celebration of the teaching in Tibetan Buddhism that it is the feminine, the energy of the feminine that ornaments emptiness. I think I have one more poem I'm going to share with you. And Carol, I did hear your request for music, and that is a wonderful thing that Allison brings to her teaching. She usually will bring some music. I guess I'm more of a poetry fan, but I can certainly bring some music too for you. Yeah, for sure. So yes, the costumes, beginning to see what costume is Mara wearing when Mara visits in the form of any hindrance or obstacle or place where you feel stuck in your life. What costume? And is it scary? And does it feel insurmountable? Try to look at it like that little girl in the pirate costume from next door, or that little boy superhero carrying his light sword. And then appreciating this time of year where the days are getting shorter. I always feel that poignancy and regret. And for those of us who have lived back east or, in New England, especially, my gosh, it really was the beginning of lots of cold and lots of dark. Here we experience the dark and some chilliness. I'm speaking to you today from the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok tribes up here in Marin County, where it's a little bit colder, actually. It's a little bit colder than in LA. But the point I'm making is to really appreciate this sense of transition, of this kind of otherworldly time, and where maybe the veils between the worlds are a little bit thinner, and we can open to whoever our ancestors may be and whatever guidance we may receive from our intuition and whatever spiritual guidance, and also appreciating the work that has been done. We aren't, most of us aren't farming and harvesting from the fields. If you have a garden, this time of harvest is important too, but just looking at it metaphorically, that whatever you have done in the past year, looking at it metaphorically and understanding that just you can appreciate the seeds that you've planted, the things that have grown from those seeds in your life. Recently somebody got in touch with me who was really depressed, just suffering from lots of depression, an old friend, and feeling like a total failure because something really bad had happened to one of their children that had been completely unpreventable, out of their control. And I just wanted to remind him, look, so many things that you set out to do this life, you have accomplished. The teaching is contemplate your sila, your goodness, your integrity. Look back over the mountains you have climbed and appreciate where you are today, wherever you are, with this sense of wherever you locate yourself in between the worlds these days. And then the last point is the one about impermanence, about really appreciating the preciousness of each moment, that whoever was in that car that flipped at the entrance to the cemetery that day, I did go back and they were alive. I could see when they were on their stretcher, they raised their hands. I don't know how they survived, but they were at least alive at that time. And you can even imagine, what is left when I die? What is left when you die? I'm glad the annoying and irritating parts of who I am will not, those will be dead. But what is left? What is left? And can it be marigolds and sugar skulls and loved ones, remembering affectionately all of our foibles and Maybe create an altar for yourself. What would you put on that altar? I can assure you it would not be empty bottles of Windex or cans of Ajax on mine. I'm not that good of a cleaner, but just reflecting on these things as this Halloween comes and whatever you're planning to do or not do to celebrate. So this is what I wanted to share with you, and following up too on Allison's beautiful teaching, about composting your pain. Another way to look at our pain is, and it's not going to work when we're in severe pain, but it can be helpful in not dwelling on it, this is the costume that life is wearing. This is the costume that life is wearing in this moment, appearing to me in the form of this pain or this sorrow. Oh my gosh, keep an eye out now, Caroline. People are, they must have gotten the note from InsightLA, or no, they're arriving because it's 12. So those of you who are arriving now at 12 o'clock, I offer a deep bow of apology to you, because the person at InsightLA who handles postings on the website posted for 12 o'clock when we've never, ever met at 12 o'clock. And so we began at 11. And so I'm really sorry, but you will be able to, I gave a talk about Halloween, and we're about to have our conversation and sharing together, but you'll be able to see the talk on YouTube whenever it's posted this week. If you're interested, it was kind of a fun Halloween talk. I encourage you to take a look. And again, I apologize for that mistake. It's never been made, but somehow maybe it was a Halloween trick. I apologize for it. And let's have some conversation together. And even if you just arrived, you can feel free to ask a question or share something from your week of practice. And Caroline will call on you when you raise your hand and invite you to unmute yourself as usual.
Laura, I see your
Hi.
hand went up there.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, Trudy. Hello, everyone.
Laura.
So good to be here. When you were talking, Trudy, I went to this place of loss, and it's not, it's really okay, but, tonight is Halloween, and I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old going on 16 in a few months, and we're invited to a friend's home who we've known since kindergarten. So there are 6 children, 2 girls and 4 boys. We'll all be there. And one of them has a little brother who's 5. And so I said to my son last night, hey, your friend has a mask. Are you guys going to go trick-or-treating? The 10th graders. And in El Segundo, they'd probably get a lot of candy. And he said, Mom, that just wouldn't be right. I don't have a costume. I'm not going to go get candy. But maybe I'll take Aiden's little brother. And I just thought that was so sweet, but it was like such a little loss for me, It's the measure of time. He's growing up. Anyway, thank you very much for so much that you said today.
Thank you, Laura. And I remember the time when it shifts from they're carrying like a little pumpkin or something for the candy to bringing a pillowcase when they're like, 10, 11, 12. And for people who may have just arrived, I just want to say again that I apologize for the mix-up that was done on the website. We began at 11 as we always do, and we always will, unless you get a big, bold announcement that something has changed.
Rick, I see you have your hand up.
Trudy, could you share your thoughts? Mankind seems to have an interesting love of being scared, which Halloween also sort of celebrates. I used to love horror films. I don't go anymore because I feel I'm scared enough. What do you make of the notion that there's an attraction to fear?
Attraction to, well, fear may, it's you feel very alive when you're scared. I think I can't watch horror movies anymore. I watched, if it's something like Get Out, yes, but then I watched the next movie by that director because I loved Get Out so much. And oh my gosh, I was haunted by those images for way too long. They would appear in my meditation. And so I can't watch them. But my daughter loves horror movies. She's, got teenagers. She loves them. And I think I never really, what do you think? I just think that there's something that you just feel very alive when you're sitting there in your seat, like in the grip. And you get to have that feeling of terror and aliveness and knowing full well that it's not happening to you. You're actually safe in your, wherever you are. What do you think? Or what does anybody think about that? It's an interesting question.
Particularly in a time that's encouraging us to be fearful of too many things, because fear is a rush in a way.
Yeah.
And fear it's a rush, and it's also we are easily manipulated by fear, and that has been used a lot in the last couple of decades. I probably starting with the second war in Iraq. David has his hand. We saw him at the same time. Thank you, Caroline. David, unmute yourself. David, you need to unmute yourself. I can't hear you.
Hi. Yeah,
Hi.
I'm one of the people who just came in at noon thinking that I just began, but about fear and the attractiveness of fear. Myself, I enjoyed a lot of horror movies, and my wife used to enjoy them until about 15, 20 years ago. But then I kind of pretty abruptly stopped enjoying them. And I figure that a couple of things converged that were different with me. One was that my wife became horribly ill, and was dealing with her illness and the deterioration of herself. And I never really thought of us people or the ones immediately around me as being that fragile and vulnerable. But once I started to experience vicariously her pain and her suffering, and how frightened she was, I started becoming averse to that kind of to the horror movies. They used to be fun just because it seemed like it was like cartoonish outside of me. No big deal. But once I started to kind of get an intense internal feeling of that, it wasn't working anymore. And then the second big episode, of course, came in 2016, when grotesqueness and horror and deterioration became seemingly interwoven with the fabric of our society. So since then, I touch and go. If I see a horror movie and seems a little delicious, then I might watch it. But if I feel like I want to get away from it, I accept that. I think it's good for me not to want to do that anymore.
I agree. I think that's wise of you, David, because you were living your own horror movie at home. It's horrible when a loved one gets a terrible diagnosis or illness and has to watch themselves become sicker and sicker. So I think I see it as kind of a gesture of self-compassion, that you didn't want to watch them anymore. You were being good to yourself, right? You probably needed to watch rom-coms or, things like that.
Yeah, that goes a lot. Nowadays. Yeah, I didn't used to, but yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
you needed cheering up.
Yeah. I use Heartland as my palliative medicine. Any evening that I feel a little bit ragged and disturbed.
Thank you. Thank you. Matthew, do you want to unmute yourself? Thank you, David.
Yeah, hi Trudy. Thank you for that. Just a very quick observation, which was I was thinking about the idea of ghosts coming in different attire, different costumes, and I was thinking about how often we clothe these ghosts ourselves, and in particular, we clothe them with the sort of narratives that we have about ourselves, false core beliefs about ourselves, our insecurities and things like that, and how easily we turn those into costumes and put them on these ghosts. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I found it helpful to think of it that way. And Mara itself, I don't know if you were here last week when Allison taught, but she was teaching about the Buddha when Mara, in the form of some kind of pain, was emotional, physical, whatever, would appear. Ananda would get, the Buddha's attendant, his cousin Ananda, would get really fretful and concerned. Buddha, Mara is here, and the Buddha would have this very counterintuitive response, which was, oh, well, invite Mara in for some tea. And they would sit together, and the Buddha would say, well, so Mara, what are you up to this time? And they'd have a conversation. And that teaching, it's the same thing. What if when, the scary vampire or scary ghost appears at our door, what if we offered, candy, sweetness? What if we fed that demon? It would be a very different relationship than if we start to cower and get anxious and run into the other room and so forth. So yeah, thank you. Equi, I'm so happy to see you. How are you? Tell me, unmute yourself and tell me, can you?
Hi, Trudy.
Hi.
It's good to see you
How are you
too.
doing? How is your practice?
It's going pretty well, I think. Yeah,
You're doing it.
I am doing it. That's what counts, right?
Amazing.
Okay, good to see you.
Nice to see you too. So Equi is Jocelyn's mom. Jocelyn teaches here from time to time, and she's a friend. And we've been told we look alike, which I consider a great compliment. You're muted if you're saying anything. You're muted.
So I'm gonna take my glasses off so people can tell.
We can tell we're really sisters, right?
We are. You look great.
So Marilyn, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, you're describing how Halloween, the trick or treat tradition, might be a metaphor for inviting in all these scary parts of ourselves or of our world. And I'm reminded of, I'm wondering if you can tell me where this story comes from, but there's a Buddhist story about some famous Buddhist teacher saying that he invites all of his scary monsters into his and it serves them tea, brings them all tea and makes them feel welcome and comfortable. And this is how he deals with these frightening and maybe it's his emotions of fear and anger or whatever. Who told that story?
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a classic story coming from exactly, the teachings of the Buddha.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Buddha is responsible for that. I
Yeah,
love that story.
yes, we don't have to make anything up, really. It's all there. The Buddha. And the great thing about the Buddha's teachings, those teaching stories, they're always relational. They're in the form of an encounter between the Buddha and somebody who comes, either whether it's Amara or whether it's just, somebody, a farmer or goat herder, or, it's mostly agrarian society. So people, a blacksmith, people who are doing the jobs that were part of that society, they come to the Buddha and they ask their questions, and the Buddha answers usually with a story, and usually with a story that's based on a metaphor that has to do with their work, like the goldsmith and the metaphor of having to pound, the metal to create something beautiful out of the gold. How, not that we're pounding ourselves and sitting, but we have to work on ourselves. We do. And, just these, if you go back to read the suttas, it's fascinating. They're very relational, very poetic, really, and metaphorical. They're hard sometimes to read because when you read the literal translations, they're very repetitious, lots of refrains. But I think you can find, maybe Bhikkhu Bodhi has versions in the Majjhima Nikaya and other translations that Bhikkhu Bodhi has done. I really recommend Bhikkhu Bodhi's translations because I think they're readable.
How do you spell that, Bhikkhu Bodhi?
It's Bhikkhu, which means monk, Bhikkhu, and then Bodhi, which means awakening or enlightenment, Bodhi.
Got it.
Like the Bodhi tree, and the tree under which the Buddha sat became enlightened or woke up.
And you mentioned Mara a moment ago, and also the Bodhi tree. I've used what the Buddha is purported to have said when he was challenged by different spirits that he called Mara. I see you, Mara. I've used that many times when I'm feeling judgmental or angry or any kind of separating feeling. And it just dissolves it, Trudy. It's amazing.
It's called mindfulness. It's called noting what you see.
There's something so
magic power of mindfulness.
Yeah, I've heard of this mindfulness stuff.
Yeah, I think you have. I'm just looking to see. I thought I could see, but I don't. There's one book in particular that I recommend because there's two, actually. Here they are, by Bhikkhu Bodhi. One came out in 2005 and it's called In the Buddha's Words, and it's an anthology of discourses. It's called In the Buddha's Words, an anthology of discourses from the Pali Canon, and it's from Wisdom Publications. And I like that one because it groups according to subjects some of the suttas. You don't have to sort of plow through, these big thick volumes of them. He's done that work. And then in 2016, another wonderful book that really every community member of every spiritual community, and forget spiritual, let's say political, society, especially now with the last year and a half of not only COVID, but all the racial unrest and reckoning. This one's called The Buddha's Teachings on Social and Communal Harmony. And again, it's an anthology of discourses on that subject. And I have referred to that book so many times this past year with different upheavals in the community and around, just looking at really in that the Buddha's teachings on social and communal harmony, in that you can find ways to approach all of these problems so wisely and so compassionately. So I do recommend both of those books of source material. Bob, I see you have your hand up. You could unmute yourself. And again, I think you're one of the people who came later, you and Winston and Sherry. And again, just apologies for the confusion.
I got faked out by the time switch.
Yeah, it wasn't a time switch. It was a mistake on the website.
Yeah, sure. I just want to put in a plug for an alternative to ghost stories because I love classic science fiction.
Oh, that's right. You're a science fiction buff. Tell us.
Well, the thing is, I think I've used some of these movies as a way of dealing with if I have generalized anxiety disorder, and the way I dealt with it earlier is to do things, make me do things that were scary, like in 1963, bicycling against the traffic down Fifth Avenue. I mean, if I could do that and live, then I was okay. And it's also that way with classic science fiction films, which, you aren't real, but you watch them and you enjoy them in a way. And then your own problems don't seem all that bad, at least for a little while.
Well, I think that's a good point. That's one point we didn't look at earlier when we were sort of responding to Rick's investigation about why do we love horror movies? Why do we love to be scared on, Halloween? And I saw the LA Times came out with this list of really scary things you could do all through the city, and that's another reason, I think, and that's that it's not actually happening in our lives, and that it puts our own scary things that we all have, at least in our minds, if not actually in our lives, it puts them in perspective. That's beautiful. Thank you. And it also explains, as David was saying earlier, why it wasn't working for him anymore, because right, home was scary already, and it wasn't going to put it in perspective because it was too real. So yeah, thank you for that.
There's one more aspect of this, which is what's scary. Well, a few years ago, there were Nixon masks. And I think last year, at least, there were Trump masks. So putting Trump in the framework of being a ghost or, a monster.
And there's just as many people out there who would wear Biden masks and be terrified. I mean, that's that's the incredible thing. That's yeah. Well, we won't go further into that, but thank you. Sochi, I knew how to pronounce it, and I just forgot again.
Sochi, like the Sochi Olympics.
Sochi.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I came in late, so I apologize if this is something you mentioned already.
No, I apologize to you. You were late because of the website.
It's fine. But I don't know if this is something we talked about, but it's something I think about a lot when it comes to like talking about inviting in our demons or inviting in the things that are really scary. There's that tension that exists between knowing that is softening, but also being too afraid in your body to do it.
Yes.
When there's maybe too much trauma and then physiological responses to trauma, or when there's a context that one is living in the context of violence or in like difficult neighborhoods or racialized discriminatory kind of experiences where it's so hard to feel like you can invite those parts of yourself in for a smoothie, so it's like it's this back and forth between, I don't know what you think or what your response to that, like that tension, that push and pull is.
Well, to me, that tension, that push and pull, it's actually a skillful way to work with trauma, because the experiences you're talking about are really traumatic. Mm-hmm. And they're not mind-made experiences. When you've been discriminated against or treated unfairly, it, and it's not in your imagination. And maybe if you have any doubt about it, you get a reality check, and then you find out, yeah, that really happened the way I thought it did. And it can be very traumatic. And so the reason I said it's push-pull is because with trauma, it's actually touch and go. When you have an experience like that, you can invite it maybe onto the porch or the steps, but not inside, or maybe you don't open the door and you put the basket of candy on the porch and you don't open the door, but you look at it and then you say, okay, there's the candy, and then you close the door. Do you see what I mean? Like you just titrate, you do it in little bits. Because to just open the door and invite it in isn't even wise when it's something too big to process, all like that all at once. And it has to be done sensitively and just like that, bit by bit. And so what you were saying is push pull. I'm reframing this, the same thing though. It's like, pull toward you a little bit and then push away when you need to. And you can just play with that. And then it becomes a very tender experiment or exploration in self-compassion and also building strength to meet those experiences more and more, so that the next time that same one comes, you can maybe open the screen door a little bit, or I don't have a screen door, but you know what I mean. Yeah, thank you. That's really important. And no, I didn't talk about that. So I'm grateful to you for bringing it up. And also what I did talk about a lot was just Day of the Dead and metaphors and teachings that come from, that we can derive from the way we're celebrating Halloween these days. And again, for those of you who came in late, it will be posted on YouTube. That's how I heard Allison's talk, her beautiful talk from last week. I just listened to her on YouTube, and so I encourage you to do the same. And happy Halloween.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more person, if there is anybody else before we close.
In the meantime, I'll go ahead and make an announcement that we will be having breakout rooms after this, so stick around. We'll do, of course, like a little break, and then we'll invite you guys back for more discussion.
And I really encourage you to attend a breakout room, because it's a chance to listen and just get to know each other a little bit in ways that you can't do with all these Zoom tiles, and so I encourage you to do that. And I also want to remind you that soon, oh my gosh, is it next weekend? Yes, soon we're having our InsightLA benefit, our annual benefit. The one we had last year with Metta World Peace, that was our first online one. It was interesting. And this year we have in the morning will be some of our wonderful InsightLA teachers. And you can just come to whatever part of it you want. And in the afternoon will be Jack and me and my beloved friend, George Mumford, whom I just adore. And I'm so happy he'll be with us. And then a fun thing is there's a singer-songwriter named Jason Mraz. Some of you may have heard his music. And Jason, I reached out to Jason via a mutual friend. And I said to him, there are two songs that I know you wrote for InsightLA. Of course, he's never heard of us, right? And one is called Living in the Present, and the other one is called Look for the Good. I said, I know you wrote those just for us. Would you be willing for our benefit to sing them for us? And I thought he'd send us a couple of videos of, of those songs, and then he might put in some words of support. But instead, he did a whole live performance just for us and for our benefit. Now, unfortunately, we can't do anything live, but you will see him sing, and it's just beautiful what he did. And I'm very grateful for that. So I hope you all will come and support your community, support InsightLA. We need you. We really need you. We're at a very exciting crossroads right now. We have a brand new ED, executive director, who started on Monday. Her name is Alicia Talbert, and she comes to us from NBC, which is, she has a business background, which is going to be very interesting. But she also has a background of decades of Buddhist practice in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Gelugpa tradition. So she knows what we're up to. And in addition, she is an African-American woman. So I think with her coming on, now our board is more people of color than white people, which is really, I think, unique. And I have to thank everybody who caused that to happen. But I think having her as our director, our next director, is just the right medicine for these times. And Mark, I'm really sad that he's going because I love him so much, but he's done a wonderful job. And it's really thanks to Mark that we were able we were the first Dharma center to be all online when COVID hit. And that's because of his digital expertise, which Alicia also brings to the job. So please come to the benefit next Saturday. God, yes, it's Saturday. Time flies. Well, whether you're having fun or not, time flies. And I want to wish you all a happy Halloween, and I will see you next week. So thank you. And feel free to unmute yourselves. Say